Hi everyone, this is a new part dedicated to the assembly of Quadra V-Tech from Cyberpunk 2077. In the last part one made double aluminum wheels instead of those heavy discs for it. But they are too big for the donor's arch, so I had to partially cut the metal on the wheel arches. No changes in the load-bearing units. Now while a complete lowering the wheel has a small margin, but there appeared another problem, although it's all matter of taste. Some people like negative camber, especially in GDM culture. Actually the rear suspension has no struts right now, and the wheel lies on the arch. It looks like there's no second wheel for the hub. Well, of course in theory. The camber and the toe can be corrected by extending of the upper levers, but that's an extreme option. Now I'm going to regulate the rack's height. They need to be shortened as well as the springs. I measured the shock strut piston using the sticky tape while it was standing in the car. There should be a cup of the bump stop on this line. I'll shorten the shock strut piston and reduce its diameter for the thread using a lathe. Although someone makes this using the angular grinding machine, always thought that the pistons were hardened and the cutter would smoke and there'd also be blue chips. It turned out the opposite, as if you're sharpening an ordinary steel rod. You cannot strongly press the cutter as the piston will get bent due to the large dead weight in the form of a shock absorber tower. Of course the stay could save the situation, but unfortunately I don't have it. Therefore I removed the material little by little. Now we can saw this part off and cut a new thread. The strut piston is ready, now the springs turn to lose in weight. Till now I removed 2 coils, if this won't be enough I'll remove some more after the fitting. The end of the spring was heated by welding, and was bent in order the spring sat normally in the retainer. Now we can assemble everything and install it in Quadra. During this time I learned to install the struts by taking away only one lever. Looks high a bit, but don't forget that the car isn't yet fully equipped and the final weight will be larger. Now we need to weld the new wheel arch covers. I took 1 mm thick sheet and began to weld a new arch cover from pieces. Decided not to do this in one piece as the arch has its curves, and there remained many parts of the old arch, so I attached to them. First I wanted to weld everything with spots as those elements didn't bear any loads, but I overreached myself and treated everything with full penetrated welds which took much more time. Till now I cleaned off the grease and covered the naked metal with the stone chip protector. However, it was possible to glue everything with glass fiber mat or put several layers of liquid arch covers. I'll determine the coverage in the course of work on Quadra. The same thing must be done on the left side, but there's a small difference. There are fuel hoses which the wheel hits with a completely lowered suspension. I'll slightly lengthen the scupper filler and press it closer to the body. Somehow I removed the clamp that held the hose. It was very uncomfortable to get to it. I'll lengthen the scupper filler with a rubber hose. To determine the correct length we need to make a hole in fiberglass. I took the petrol cap from the Jeep Wrangler. It perfectly fitted the size of both the body and the scupper filler. According to its dimensions I'll make a hole in fiberglass. As there were no hex bolts I screwed the cap with screws. So far I'm thinking whether to leave it this way or drown into the fiberglass. When Quadra will have all the mounted elements it'll look harmoniously on the body and not so splashy. After the cap I welded the left arch and also covered it with stone chip protector. Now we can connect the scupper filler with the gas tank. It was scary to weld over the gas tank with the high-octane gasoline within, but as a result everything worked out. Had a little doubt about the petrol resistance of silicone, but the seller assured that the hose was gasoline-proof. The hoses are 4 centimeters away from the wheel. We can even make some metal protection from a slab for them. I've got finished with the rear suspension and closed all the holes in the fenders. There are few uncovered places in the rockers, now I'll fix it. First we need to make the inserts in the plastic rocker. I'll weld a metal sheet to it which will close the gap between the rockers. This time I welded the sheet in spots. This recess can be quietly covered with a thick lubricant or rust-proofing agent, and all the joints can be previously treated with a sealant. The same thing I did to the right rocker. Probably, from this exact moment the final connection of 2 bodies can be considered to be completed. Now I want to make the car interior, precisely to fix the previously made chairs. For this purpose I need to print the steering wheel on the 3D printer, because in most cases it defines the location of the chair in the cabin. I printed a steering wheel from several parts in proportion to the interior of the game model. Right after sandpapering them a bit I glued everything with a superglue. It's probably more correct to call it the control column due to the lack of an upper arc. Was surprised to find out that the steering wheel was ergonomically convenient. My thumbs easily reached all the buttons. I compared it with the old steering wheel, and it exactly coincided in diameter. I don't know whether it's a coincidence or the developers of this car really were analyzing the ergonomics of this car. In order to fix it on the steering column, I sawed the spline part from the old steering wheel and attached it to control column. Yet there's no clear understanding from what materials were gonna make it. For the moment I got aluminum sheets, CNC trimmer and argon welding in my mind, and polyurethane or poured plastic will serve as the filling. Now we need to get in the car and try to steer. It's very convenient to hold in hands, and it doesn't block the view of the monitor. And it was very easy to steer due to the missing upper arc. It's an ideal control column for this kind of car to my view. In order to fix the chair in its place it should be centered according to the steering wheel. Although this displacement is insensible when you sit in. By the way, the main cause of it is that I made the chair wider for a couple of centimeters. The central tunnel of Mazda is 20 centimeters and Quadra has about 15 centimeters. I won't touch the tunnel, but the chair can be cut a little. Moreover, I made those curves for some reason, but there are none in the model. The chair turned out good. After fitting to the body the displacement is almost invisible. And if it wasn't felt before now it won't appear at all. I fixed the chair with the brackets in standard places. I welded the captive nuts to the angle bar for convenience. Later the bolts will be replaced with the screws which will drown in the chair material. The upper fasteners were welded to the brace and also bolted. The chair turned out to be very rigid due to the thickness of fiberglass, and those mounts were quite enough for it. The same way I fixed the passenger seat. There's a spacious recess behind the seats where I'll place a compressor, a receiver, and all the electronics in future. By the way, thanks for your advice about switchover from electric drives to pneumatic cylinders for the door mechanism. Just exactly for this I bought the valves and all the fittings for them. It's a pity that it won't be possible to completely transfer the door mechanism to the pneumatic cylinder. I'll tell about that and many other things in the next part. In the meantime, wishing you a happy coming new year. Don't forget to put your likes, leave the comments and of course subscribe to the channel. Thanks everyone for watching. See you in the next videos.